1. Hey everyone, we're here for our next session. We have Nick here. He'll be doing a talk on Bitcoin and DeFi, mining Hashrate tokens. And I will let him take it from here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Getting a little bit of echo from you, Shin, I think. Do you mind fixing that for me?
I think the echo's gone.
Okay. Yep. Nope, it's still there, but we'll power through. Are you able to? At least it's only echoing for me, hopefully. All right. It's only. So yeah. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. My name is Nick Hansen. I'm CEO of Luxor Technology. Prior to this, I was a software engineer, so I'm a software engineer by trade, a CEO in training. And at Luxor, we're the largest North American mining pool for Bitcoin and also several other coins as well, Cash, Dash, Zen. We mine a lot of things, but our focus has really been on Bitcoin recently. And the advent of Hashrate tokens has definitely made that made that even more interesting. Something we think about a lot. We think of Hashrate as an asset class. We've been thinking about Hashrate as an asset class for multiple years now, and this is the first inception of Hashrate as like a DeFi asset, which is really interesting. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about these Hashrate tokens. We're going to talk about how we value them, the different ones that are available on the market, and how it compares to like the underlying asset, because these are a representation of some physical asset that is being produced, and in that case, that asset is Hashrate. So agenda, we're going to go over what mining and Hashrate actually is, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. We're going to jump into Hashrate tokens, what they are, how they work, and which ones exist, and if there may be more in the future. Number 3, we're going to talk about how to value them, and then we're going to do an experimental model of what a Hashrate token actually is.
Okay. Hey Nick, can you refresh your browser?
From the panel that there's a bit of echoes. Let me see if there's anything on my end I can do.
Hey, Nick, can you refresh your browser?
Yeah, let me try refreshing.
Sorry, guys. Crowdcast has been acting up a bit today. All right, can you say something?
Yeah. It's like you're broadcasting from another window. Oh, am I in this twice? That's probably what's happening here. There we go. I imagine great. That's quite a lot better. Okay, thanks everyone. Apologies for that. We were doing a little bit of testing and I didn't close the test window. Okay. All right, we're all good there. So as I mentioned, and then we're going to get into a hypothetical model that it should be experimental, should be pretty interesting, especially for the miners in the crowd, because we talk about an S9, which is the, up to now has been like the prototype miner. It is being, somewhat phased out, but it should be a pretty interesting discussion. So just a super quick refresher on what mining is. Hashrate is the raw compute that is actually generated. That's the stuff that is, that's what miners are actually doing to produce new blocks on the network. The hash price is a concept that Luxor has introduced in the last year or so. And the idea is that the value of hashrate changes over time based on multiple different factors. At hashrateindex.com, which is a Luxor entity, we keep track of that and monitor it. And it's really important for making decisions around mining investments. Miners are the physical rigs themselves. They look a lot like computers. Like little shoe boxes, computers and shoe boxes. And they actually are the ones getting plugged into the wall. And then a mining pool, it's what Luxor is. It's what we do. We take all of that work, we divvy it up across all of the different workers in the pool, and make sure that everybody's working on some unique portion of the block. And then ultimately we submit the block to the network, and then we deliver the rewards to the miners. So this concept of Hashrate tokens is really interesting, and it's new. It's a DeFi approach to valuing Hashrate. The hash price is an interesting concept, and Hashrate tokens are a way for you to actually own that hash rate without having to actually purchase the miners themselves. So So we'll do an intro of which tokens actually exist today. So we've got the PBTC35A. Quite a mouthful, but what that stands for is the Poolin Bitcoin 35A, 35 joules per terahash miner. So the 35A is an indication of the class of miners that this token represents. And I think, yeah, we put that a bit in there into the description. And then also Mars is a governance token for the project. So, and then there's another one. There's the BTCST, which is the Binance version. Oh, also I'd like to mention that the PBTC35A is issued on Ethereum as a standard contract, and the BTCST is actually issued on Binance's chain. It's a very similar concept. They collateralize 0.1 terahash per second of Bitcoin mining power with an efficiency of 60 watts instead of 35 watts per terahash, and then you stake those tokens, and then you get some yield based on the amount that the tokens are actually, that the miners are actually generating. So let's jump into what like the benefits and the risks are for these tokens as a whole. So by providing exchange grade liquidity to the mining power market, these tokens offer a great way for for miners to sell some portion of their hash rate. Right now I know we're still sort of in the experimentation phase with these tokens, where only trusted partners of Poolin or Binance can sell these, can issue these tokens via the Poolin or Binance platform. But maybe eventually, I think that they'll be able to open this up, and your average person will be able to sell some portion of their hash rate, effectively selling a forward in this case. Oh no, my presentation is not displaying. Let me do that as well. Yeah, apologies on that. So back up just a second. So this is just the overview of the PBTC35A. And then this is, I'll let you read through this as I go back through some of the pros. Some of the pros of a hash rate token. So it gives somebody a lower barrier to entry to hash rate as an asset class. Hopefully you finish reading that, and then this one. Right now it would be very difficult for someone to make a small investment in hash rate. If you wanted to get exposure to this asset class, the minimum you would have to invest is close to $1 million. And the reason for that is because right now, like if you wanted to invest and say you wanted to purchase 10, so you wanted to buy 10 S19s, that's the prototype miner today. Those are about $10,000 a piece. You're looking to spend around $100,000. That's more than you would be able to run in your home. So you have to start looking at a co-location facility, and putting those miners into a co-location facility would be really tough right now, because they won't take less than 250 kilowatts at a time. And so an S19 uses 3,000 watts. You would only be at 30,000 watts or 30 kilowatts. And so they won't take less than 250. So you have a real hard time getting into hash rate and mining, because these are, the barrier to entry is very high. You have to have a large capital outlay up front, which a lot of people don't want to do, and I can understand that as well. And it also reduces the transaction costs, so you can actually get sub Satoshi amounts. You can get very small amounts credited as well. Some of the risks of hash rate tokens, right now hash rate tokens are very profitable, not only for the pool but for the buyers of the tokens themselves. The real risk would be whether the tokens become unprofitable. I believe both of them call that out in their white paper in their launch, but they don't. What would happen in that case is the value of the token would go to zero, and they would end up reducing the payments to effectively zero, which I think at that point would kind of cancel the value of the token. Uncertain exactly how the downtime of rigs work. Rigs, the yield of the rig of the tokens actually comes from a mining machine plugged into a facility somewhere. And if you've ever seen a mining facility, those things are not perfectly robust. So they do build in some downtime to these, but if there's a larger downtime than that, that may be reflected in the token as well. And then you also have some, there also is some risk of trading on venues like Uniswap, which is inherent to all DeFi tokens. But in this case, it's a risk that you take on by buying the token as opposed to purchasing the hash rate, which is kind of what we're trying to talk about here. So hopefully that's kind of a really broad overview of some of the benefits and the risks. If you add any questions to the chat, I'll make sure to try to get to them at the end. I do want to leave a good 10 to 15 minutes for maybe some chat at the end, because I think this will introduce a lot of questions, and you can follow up with me at the end as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about how these tokens are valued currently. And I think this is where it starts to get really interesting. So you can use a DCF on these. You can do a discounted cash flow on both of these tokens over the lifetime of the token, and get a valuation for what these tokens should be. We take in hash power growth as a parameter on the top, and then we think about how much the price of Bitcoin would have to appreciate for these tokens to continue to be profitable. So right now, you can see that we think that the price of the BTCST token is actually quite overvalued compared to what its DCF model would reflect. And then conversely, the PBTC35A token seems undervalued based on its DCF. You can also value these based on the underlying asset, which we'll get into as well. Which we're gonna start with. This is not really a hypothetical model. This part is really just laying out the key components that price each of these different assets. And then from there, we'll get into some hypothetical models as well. So you can see here we have the BTCST token has an efficiency of 60 watts per terahash. Hash power per unit is 0.1 terahash. And the current price of one of these tokens is $329. We take the value of an S19 by converting its price times its terahash. The current price of the token normalized to 1 terahash per second to its token price, to the terahash per second of the miner. In this case, a BTCST token, if you convert to the value, or you convert the S19's value to a BTCST token's equivalent value, would be around $31,300. Which in this case is a premium of 213%. The way you get that is just by dividing the equivalent conversion divided by the value of an S19. Now, if you look at the PBTC35A token, we think the efficiency is a little higher, a little better. You actually want this number to be low. The lower this number, the better, because the units here are watts per terahash, and if you're using less power and generating more, terahash, that's good for you. You're generating more revenue without paying the power cost. In this case, the token is normalized to 1 terahash per second, and the current price is $121.69. At least that's when I checked this morning. In this case, if we normalize that to an S19, we can see that it's an $11,565-ish with a liquidity premium of only 15%. And so we think that the liquidity premium should actually be more around 40 to 50% for either of these tokens, and we'll kind of outlay why. So when you're building a facility for Bitcoin mining, generally quite a lot of your expense is not just in miners. It's built into the infrastructure in the machine, it's built into the you've got your data center. You've got all the electrical work that needs to go in. You have man hours to man the actual facility. You've got all of that, as well as there is some premium just for having access to the liquidity, which is really the reason why we think there should be a bit more of a premium here. Very similar to the GBTC premium over the native asset value, the NAV. We think there should be a premium here, and I think that the PBTC premium is a little bit low. So now we're going to jump into an experimental model of how you would value a different type of token, say something that is less efficient. So the S9, if you're familiar with Bitcoin mining, you know that the S9 up to now has been like the workhorse. The S19 is pushing it out a bit now, but the S9 was originally released in 2016. Most of it was starting to ship in early 2017, and has been around for now 4 or 5 years, or almost 5 years. Which is in mining terms, that's like eons. That's like decades. It's the long, that thing has been around for a while, and it's actually maintained some value. So what we did is we took a look at the price change over time. So at Hashrate Index, we keep track of the value of miners over time. We do that by aggregating a bunch of different avenues, different Telegram chats, websites, Chinese and American websites, OTC brokers, etc. We aggregate all of that into what we call the rig index. And so for an S19 on October 1st, the rig index was about $3,000. And then for an S9, it was about $60. And now the current price of an S19 is about $100,000. And the current price of an S9 is about $375. So you can see there's been quite a large change in both of the values. But the S9 has increased exceedingly versus the S19. And we're going to dig into what the value of a token based around the efficiency of an S9 would look like, and really dig into some of really large arbitrage opportunities that potentially exist in this ecosystem. And it looks like this token is exposing these large opportunities that have existed in the underlying economics, and it's really just a result of the token being issued and finding a natural value. That these big disparities in pricings exist. So we'll jump into this is going to be a bit of a math heavy slide, and I'll try to explain each of the units as best as I can. Please do put any of your questions in the chat, and we'll try to dig into them. So in S9, this is just the efficiency is 100 watts per terahash. So that means it's quite a bit less efficient than the S19, which means that it uses more power to generate a single terahash, where the S19 is quite a lot lower. It's also it's considered legacy equipment now, which means that the hash power per S9 is quite a lot lower. So it's about 14. Sometimes you'll see 14 and a half, but we decided to normalize to 14 terahash here. The S19 is 95 terahash. And that's just due to improvements in the actual quality of the machines, as well as the process of the chips. So the chips have gotten a lot better. So right now, the value of an S9 is $375. If you remember from the previous slide, that's an increase of 625% since October 1st. And so we call that's even more than the value of an S19. So we think that the value of the token would be reflected in that as well. So we convert the value of an S9 to a normalized PBTC35A token, similar to what we did in the previous one of the previous slides. And in this case, we get to $1,700. But this isn't quite an apples to apples comparison, because we're now comparing the PBTC35A token to what would be a PBTC100A token based on the efficiency. So this isn't quite a fair example. So what we need to do is figure out how to normalize a PBTC100A token to the value of a PBTC35A token. So what we can do here is we can actually adjust the value of an S9 to the delta from here, this 190% delta, and we end up with this number here, 1190. And so what that delta represents is what we think the value of an S9 would be based on the change. I was trying to come up with a term for this, but the change in value over time. So this is a kind of a high level concept, but I think it's interesting. So we can also compare more granularly the value of a PBTC35A to the PBTC100A based on just the efficiency itself. If you look at the right panel here. So we know that the token the PBTC 35A token was launched at $100. If we compare that to if we normalize that to the efficiency here, we can see that the hypothetical price of a PBTC 100A token would be about $35. And then using today's current price, that would be around $42. So in the case here, we would take the $35 times the $14, 14 terahash, and end up with a value for an efficiency normalized S9 of about $490 at launch. At today's prices, that would be about $588. And so this is really the crux of the talk today, is that there are very large arbitrage opportunities here that exist between the value of an S9, the adjusted value of an S9, and then the value of the token if you compared it to a different efficiency value, base efficiency value, based on this liquidity premium. So what this is telling me is that either the value of the PBTC 35A token is low, or the value of an S9 is high, or some combination of some combination of both. We've seen a pretty meteoric rise in the value of these machines, especially the S9. And really, the reason for this is because there's a mining floor that you would have to, once you get above the mining floor, then you can actually start generating yield on miners that were previously effectively worthless. And I think that might be why we're seeing such a large increase in the value of an S9 as compared to some of the better equipment that exists today. So an S19, its floor is much lower, where the S9's floor is much higher. But once you get above that floor, you're able to start generating yield where you wouldn't have been previously. Where the S19 is going to always be generating yield, it's just a lower amount. And I think that that's where you're going to see this delta increase. Now, conversely, since the floor for the S19, I think I said floor, and it may be confusing. That I don't mean the price floor, I mean the profitability floor. Where an S19's profitability floor is much lower, meaning the price of Bitcoin can go down much, much more, and the S19 can still be profitable. Where the S9, there is a floor for where an S9 is profitable, and it's much higher than an S19. So in the case that Bitcoin has an extended downturn, the value of an S9 is going to decrease significantly faster than an S19. So this will introduce more volatility into the market. But what I think is actually happening here is that the PBTC token is undervalued if you consider it in the terms of the efficiency of an S9. So let's take a look at some of the questions. I realize I only left 8 minutes for questions. I guess I'll put this slide up because I would like to, hear if there are any questions, whether you'd like to, what you'd like to talk about. You can ping me on Twitter, either Luxor Tech Team or my personal. Also an email. It's great. I usually respond to email within a day. We'll go back to that one. But I also wanted to show these because these are actually kind of hilarious. These are from Bitcoin Talk right around the time the S9 was released. This poor guy here was talking about how he would only be able to mine 1.1 BTC per month with his S9. This guy was talking about how it's going to take at least 140 days to ROI an S9, where nowadays, like, most people are trying to ROI an S19 in 18 months or so. And then IPO, and then Bitfury just announced that they're getting ready to go in IPO, I believe yesterday or the day before. So, predictions on Bitcoin Talk are always fun to go look at in retrospect. And as you can see, the S9 has actually held its value pretty well. It was $2,100 in May of 2016. It's still about $375, which is maybe a bit high, but that's okay. So anyway, I really appreciate you guys tuning in to the talk today. Let me go look through the comments here to see if there's anything that we'd like to address. As for the semiconductor shortage, we actually are seeing that currently. Semiconductors, not I wouldn't say broadly that semiconductors are in a shortage, but the miners themselves are definitely in a shortage. We're seeing that the hash rate of Bitcoin has somewhat topped. But it is not following the price of Bitcoin as much as we would have expected. And most likely the reason for that is because of shortages in China. So there are not as many S19s being shipped as there is demand for in the market, which is another reason why there is quite a large increase in value of an S19. So if you were purchasing an S19 last summer, you could probably have gotten them for less than $2,000, and now the value for them is close to $10,000. Will we continue to see this? I think we will. There's outsized demand for S19s, which is a different type of chip than the S9 or any of the other predecessors. It's a smaller process, more efficient, etc. And I think we'll continue to see that shortage over the next 12 to 18 months. You're going to see a lot of if you go look through like mining news, you'll see a lot of really big companies are purchasing a lot of miners. Bitfarms just announced a big purchase from WhatsMiner. The Marathon Group has been purchasing up miners in Bitcoin for a while now. There's a lot of companies that are getting into mining, net new investment in mining in North America. There's actually a lot of it very cheap power in North America to be had. So it's going to make it a prime place to get miners and get them plugged in. I definitely think that this is something that we'll see over the next 6 to 12 months. You're going to see a large investment, and eventually the hash rate will catch up. And the hash rate is, I would say that the hash rate is going to, I would say it'll probably double this year. Maybe not quite. Maybe it'll come in just a little under double. But there is a large swath of miners getting ready to get plugged in. So these tokens right now are very profitable, and I think they'll continue to be very profitable for quite a while. They actually became even more profitable yesterday as there was a downward difficulty adjustment, which means that your yields are even higher. So looking at a couple of the other questions here, we've got the Hashrate token. How would you compare Hashrate token and BTC mining governance token? How would you value a governance token? So I'm guessing in this case, you're talking about issuing a token that would govern the output of a particular mine, where I think in this case, it's actually very similar. So I would use a very similar model. Take up the bag of miners that you have inside your facility. Say it's you've got 5,000 S19s, effectively tokenizing them, and then really the risk there is to the buyer that you would stop mining the machines because they're no longer profitable. The tokens also build in a floor price for the price of electricity, which I don't know if we actually call that out here. So they use a 5.3 cent kilowatt or cent per kilowatt hour price for electricity in the PBTC 35A. I believe it's something very similar in BTC ST. I believe maybe it's 5.8 cents, which is actually quite high for the mining industry. Really, I think I would say the norm is around 4 cents. If you're able to get power for less than 4 cents, then you're in a really good facility, or you're at least in progress to building a good facility. Depends on how much capital you have to expend to extract that 4 cent energy. Some of the best deployments have energy in the 2 cent range. 2.2 to 2.3 cents is some of the best energy you can get, which I think is one of Bitfury's biggest competitive advantages. They've done a really good job of getting power purchase agreements in for less than 2.5 to 2 cents. So, all right. I think that's all of the questions that we have. The governance token, the tokens are traded in Uniswap, SushiSwap, Binance, etc. I believe yesterday's sessions are recorded, and I have not looked at any of the projects that tokenize hash rate, which would be it's a really interesting idea, and I think that's what we touched on a little bit before. It was like the governance token, using the value to purchase and burn. So I think that actually makes a lot of sense. So I think that's it. Sin, I'm all done here. Thank you very much for the time today. Look forward to hearing your questions and comments. I've already got quite a few Twitter questions, so look forward to answering those as we progress.
Thanks, Nick. This was fantastic. We're going to transition to our next session now.